Our good friend Brian Baldinger, nice enough to join us as we get ready now. Week 11 in the NFL. Time flies when you're having fun, and the 49ers are going to be having a little fun in Mexico City. They've been in Denver getting ready for altitude. They arrive in Mexico City this weekend, and they'll be playing on Monday Night Football against division rival Arizona. Baldy, thank you so much for joining us. We're interested in where your road has you this week. Always a pleasure to bend your ear for a minute or two. How are you, pal?
Yeah, Damon, that's good to be with you guys. I was supposed to go to Buffalo, but I don't know anybody's going to Buffalo these days. So they switched my game to Baltimore. So I've got the Carolina Panthers and the streaking Baltimore Ravens here this weekend.
Very interesting. That game in Buffalo, 4 feet of snow, by the way, in upstate New York. So they have relocated that bad boy to Detroit. And since the Bills are actually going to be playing Detroit on Thanksgiving, it's a little bit of an advantage for Buffalo. And who would have ever thought Buffalo would be looking for some unfair advantages? But given their last couple weekends of football, I'm sure they're happy to have it.
Well, they're playing in some epic games. You know, this game with the Vikings last weekend, and we all kind of either watched it or saw the highlights. I mean, it had so many twists and turns to it and so many just incredible plays, from Justin Jefferson on 4th and 18 to Patrick Peterson intercepting Josh Allen in the end zone to Eric Hendricks, recovering a bobbled snap between the center and Josh Allen that ultimately led to the defeat. They got to hang in there. These things can happen during a stretch of a season. You got to find a way to overcome it, and so that's what they're faced with.
This may be an unfair question, but I'm me, so I'm going to ask it anyway. When a team has back-to-back games of that magnitude and loses them both, what's the likelihood that this leads to sort of a letdown that takes a while to pull yourself out of? Is that relevant in any way?
Yeah, oh sure. I mean, we've seen it before. I mean, I was on a team in Philadelphia in 1992. We started 7-2. We lost our middle linebacker, and whatever reason, the coaches knew that they weren't going to be extended, and we went into a 9-game tailspin. We were a good team, but we lost 9 in a row. I think it was 9 or 7 in a row, and we finished out of the playoffs. It could tailspin the best of you, but you hope that the leadership and coaching, can pull yourself out of it. I think Buffalo has what it takes to do it, but they've got to do it. So we won't know. That question is valid. We all are going to be watching to see if this is a team that's going to crash or rebound right now.
The 49ers, Brian, have an awful lot of numbers that are leaning, in their direction as they're looking at this matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. The fact that Kyler Murray is going to be a game-time decision obviously leans into their direction. The 49ers are looking to get better in the red zone. The Cardinals' defense isn't particularly good in the red zone, so that's sort of leaning in the 49ers' direction. They just played what I'm going to call a forgettable game against the LA Chargers. When we look back on this season, that game's not going to be remembered, but they did a lot of things in that game that Kyle wants to see as he puts together his path to victory, starting with 40 carries. Kyle's never lost a game with 40 or more carries by his running backs, and he was able to get that. Do you think he's looking for more of the same against Arizona?
I think every game is different, Damon. I don't know that, that's the magic formula. I mean, it's a great stat. Don't get me wrong. They put together a great drive in the fourth quarter when they were losing 16-13 to take the lead. And then they never relinquished it. But, they went 77 yards on, 16 plays, whatever it was, chewed up a bunch, almost 8 minutes of clock. It was a great drive. And, the only way you put those drives together is if you execute and you don't beat yourselves. You're not putting yourself in harm's way with bad penalties. You're finding ways to convert on third down like they did with Juwan, in the first couple of conversions. And so, and then Ayuk caught a big pass over the middle. It wasn't a perfect throw by Jimmy, but it was a really acrobatic catch in the middle of the field, took him down for McCaffrey to go win it. But, look, they have a good 1-2 punch, in Eli and McCaffrey. I expect them to stay with that. The one thing that jumped out to me, honestly, Damon, in that game was how the Chargers played McCaffrey without the ball and how it opened up things for so many other players. Whether it was Khalil Mack not rushing the quarterback, trying to bubble McCaffrey coming out of the backfield, whether it was double covering him on some Texas routes, opening up things for, Kittle and Ayuk. I just saw things in that game where, you just look at the stats of McCaffrey, you're like, pretty pedestrian. Except, look what he was able to create with just him being on the field and how the Chargers kind of game planned him.
So, Baldy, we keep on attaching the word gravity, to Steph Curry. And Curry pulls defenses with him on a basketball court like no one else. Is that what we need to start kind of measuring Christian McCaffrey by, his gravity?
It's kind of hard to watch, just in the TV. You're just watching the games on TV. Even if you go to the games, it's kind of hard to see it. When you go back and you watch it like I did on Monday, like you really see just how much attention was paid to him and how really you're able to open things up. Even like the throw down the sideline to Ray McLeod. I mean, that was McCaffrey in the flat, and the corner was really favoring McCaffrey and opened up the window behind him. And so I think that's something that teams have to pay attention to. It'll be interesting because I think everybody will do it different. Certainly, it was Brandon Staley that said we got to, after what they saw in that first game against the Rams, they gave him a lot of attention. And, that's why he didn't really get the ball in a lot of big spots in that last game.
What do you think along those lines that the Cardinals with their defensive personnel might try to do?
Well, you can't just look at the stats of the Cardinals. I know they're not good, but they have a lot of chess pieces. They have, Isaiah Simmons is a guy they do a lot with because he's a very talented, big athlete. They do a lot with Zaven Collins. They do a lot with Budda Baker, Jalen Thompson. They have guys that they can, if McCaffrey comes in the backfield, Isaiah, you take him. You got length, you can run, you can cover. That could see, and they've got a good defensive coordinator in Vance Joseph. So I could see some kind of creativity like that, almost like in basketball terms, like a boxing one, where you take a guy and you're like, okay, he's yours, you shadow him. We'll give you as much help, but we're gonna give him to you, and we'll zone everything else off. I could see times where they'll do things like that with McCaffrey.
Brian Baldinger with us here on Damon and Ratto on a Friday afternoon, already week 11. My goodness. And just looking at how this, string is going to play out for the 49ers, they have two of their least sexy, but I think two of their most important games just in back-to-back weeks here. Handling business in Mexico City against Arizona is exactly what you want to do in division. Then they have an underachieving New Orleans team coming into town on November 27th.
Don't do it, Damon. Don't tell me that you're overlooking those games waiting for Miami to come to town.
I'm not, but I'm saying
don't do it.
You got Miami, Tampa, and Seattle, the 3-game stretch after that. To buy any cushion in that 3-game stretch, I think you got to win these next two just to make the math simpler at the end of the year. I'm not playing look ahead. I'm actually stressing how important these 2 games are.
Well, I think, all you have to do, now I don't know if this is going to work or not work. I was talking to Fred Warner on Tuesday night. They're in Colorado Springs. They're practicing at altitude. They've done these things before, going to West Virginia and practice when they got East Coast games. I just think when you make the decision, because there's 2 ways to do this week, Damon. You can just fly in on Saturday, just play the game and get the hell out of there, and just go, don't be affected by the altitude, mentally overcome it, and go beat a team that you should win. Or you could go to Colorado Springs and train for 4 or 5 days at altitude and get yourself physically, mentally prepared, kind of really block out the distractions and, get ready for this game. So I think just the approach itself, it doesn't guarantee anything, but just the fact that they're taking it this serious, it's Arizona, it's Mexico City, it's international game, all this stuff, to kind of go back to training camp at altitude and train, I think it says something about how the organization is looking at this week's game.
The Cardinals are largely defined by Kyler Murray, either correctly or wrongly. So at this point, we don't know if he's going to play, but on the assumption that he does, what kind of Kyler Murray can you expect to get, or can you not expect to get any kind of Kyler Murray because you never know what you're going to get from week to week?
Well, if you watch that game against the Rams last weekend, I mean, Colt McCoy played a great game. And to me, if I was the 49ers, after watching Colt play, I think I'd rather play against Kyler. Like, I know he's a threat to break the pocket and do all the things he can do because he's just, a freak athlete. But Colt McCoy is exactly what would give the 49ers a problem. The guy got the ball out of his hands fast. His two starting receivers, caught 19 passes. DeAndre Hopkins caught 10. The second-year player caught 9. He got the ball to his wide receivers, and he got it out of his hands and was barely touched. Aaron Donald had no effect on him because he's getting them. To me, that's what I would want when I'm going up against Nick Bosa and those guys up front. I want the ball out of my hands fast, and I want it in the receiver's hands quickly. And that's something that Kyler Murray kind of struggles with sometimes.
Niners got a big one coming up on Monday Night Football to wrap up, again, Week 11. It's already here, and we got it underway with another Green Bay Packers loss. How many more weeks do they have to remain in a conversation, if they even remain in any sort of realistic NFC conversation here, Brian?
I'll be honest, Damon. Go back and you study this game. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is just not sharp. He's just not. I mean, he's just missing too many throws. And he has to be MVP good because the receiving core is not great by any stretch. They got two young kids. They're still, they just do things that aren't at the caliber that you really need if you want to go real compete. They just don't have those type of athletes at those positions. I know Christian Watson's caught 5 touchdown passes in the last 2 weeks. That's nice. But he's not really a great route runner. He really doesn't understand the game yet. He's learning. He's just a young kid learning. They just look and Tennessee just said Tennessee's a tough out for anybody. They just said you're not going to run the ball on us, and so those guys, A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, who had run for 200 yards a week before and 200 yards against Buffalo, I mean, they ran for 56 yards last night. I mean, they just went up against a team that just physically just beat them up really good up front.
By the way,
I'm not going to say they're cooked, but this is going to be a struggle.
Are the Tennessee Titans kind of like the Niners with worse uniforms?
They are they're like a python. They just constrict and just choke you. That's just how they play. They just go right through you. They don't go around you. They go through you. You look at, I could show you 5 passes of Aaron Rodgers last night in the worst position that you'd want to see any quarterback, just trying to get the ball out of his hands as 2 guys are laying the wood on him. They're just a physically tough football team. They're just coached a different way. They're different than the 49ers. They're different than the other 31 teams in this league.
Stylistically, not personnel-wise, but stylistically, are they the kind of team that could get to a Super Bowl, or is there an inherent flaw in what they do and the way they do it that will prevent them from that?
No, if Tannehill throws the ball like he did last night, which is almost perfect, if he plays like that, then they could win a Super Bowl. Because they can take anything you do, they can take one arm behind your back and make you play with the other arm. They have that ability. If you want to affect the quarterback, fine. If you want to shut your running back game down, they can do that. They have every ability, and they could basically control everything with their front four. They don't have to blitz. But they have everything else. They have a playmaking free safety. They have just a banshee of a middle linebacker and David Long. They're 10 deep on the defensive line. I mean, and they're well coached. So if the quarterback plays like he did last night, then yes, they could win a Super Bowl.
Baldy, if Jeff Saturday beats the Eagles with the Colts this weekend, he needs to be named Coach of the Year after just 2 weeks. Immediately. What did you think of the win over the Raiders? Obviously, that can be an indictment on the Raiders. If you want to do that, we can do that too. But is there some there to Jeff Saturday that will prove itself lasting and is not just a new voice in the room, everybody got a bounce in their step and a giddy up, but that giddy up ends early?
Well, put Matt Ryan back in at quarterback. I mean, that was his decision. He switched out to the right guard. Will Freeze went in there for the other starting right guard. So he kind of fixed that position, which was really bad. He challenged Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly to go play like Pro Bowl players, and they did. And then Jonathan Taylor got healthy, and he hit a 66-yard home run that really made a difference in the game. They looked like a different football team than they did the week before when they played the Patriots, and the rookie quarterback, a young quarterback, got sacked 9 times, hit 14 times. They just stopped all that nonsense. And Matt Ryan gave them the leadership they needed. So this is a big test because Philly, they just signed Ndamukong Suh, and they just signed, Linval Joseph. They know they got to shore up the defensive front. If they beat Philadelphia, which is all focus this week after that Monday night loss, then you're right, Damon. He needs to be in the conversation for Coach of the Year because it'd be one of the great turnarounds.
Conversely, how far beyond broken are the Raiders? And this is just based on what you see, not only the way they play, but sort of their reactions to everything.
Well, the owner came out and said that he's very pleased with the head coaching job. It's not a good job. It's not a good head coaching job by Josh McDaniels. They don't finish games out. I don't see, outside of Max Crosby, I don't see any defensive players doing anything on that side of the ball. And you could say, okay, well, they signed Chandler Jones to a big contract. I haven't seen him make a play yet. They ran the ball for about a 3-game stretch with Josh Jacobs and haven't been able to do it since. And, there's games when they just, offensively, they don't do anything creatively. Like, just with Devontae Adams. I don't see any of the creativity that they did with Devontae in Green Bay with the Raiders right now. I don't see him in the backfield in all these different motions and all these different, he lined up against the Saints a couple weeks ago. They got shut out. He played at left end the whole game, and a rookie corner kind of ate him up. Like, I just don't see creativity to the offense, and that's what Josh McDaniels is supposed to bring.
Will the Raiders fall to 0-6 on the road at the Broncos? And if they do, how do you justify bringing that all back for the following week? It seems like they're committed to not paying 2 head coaches at the same time more than they are to figuring this thing out in real time. Let's wrap up with this, Baldy, because it's probably the biggest game on the board in terms of NFC playoff implications. Yep. We got the 6-3 Cowboys at the 8-1 Vikings. Are the Vikings as good as their record would say they are?
Well, they keep finding ways to win games, and so they're good. To come back last week like they were down, to make all the plays they got all the playmakers that you need, whether it's Dalvin Cook going 81 yards on one play when they're down 27-10. It looks like the thing was going to get away from them. Whether it's Patrick Peterson intercepting Josh Allen in the end zone twice, or Zadarius Smith, they got playmakers. They got a whole room full of them. Not to mention Justin Jefferson or anybody else. So they have what it takes. Dallas is reeling defensively. They don't look great right now. If you run the ball right at them, they really struggle with run fits and just playing smart football. And I think they're asking Dak to do too much, to be honest with you. This is a great test because if Dallas loses this game, they'll be really reeling. And we can probably officially anoint Minnesota as the team to beat. But they have to go do it. It'll be some kind of scene at U.S. Bank Stadium on Sunday.
Baldy, always good to talk to you, brother. Thank you so very much for joining us. Sorry that you were diverted from Buffalo, but they saddled you
I'm
with
not
another
sorry.
really good
sorry.
game. Yeah,
I'm not ready to put out those snowshoes yet, and I'm ready to go eat some crab cakes tomorrow in Baltimore and get ready for this one.
Forget about snowshoes. You need you need a team of mush dogs through 4 feet.
I
of
need the
snow,
Arctic Cat. I need like a brand new souped up Arctic Cat.
Like The Shining? The end of The Shining?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Baldy.
All right, guys. Take care, man. Have a good weekend.